So we've already talked a little bit about, do you have a 401k in the past, currently, or soon to be in the future? But the question really becomes, is it as good as you're led to believe? And that's the purpose of this discussion. So if you don't know, a 401k was created in 1978 as a way for people to save for their retirement, because at that point, the government knew that as the population grew and aged, they could not care for the population. And that's what's happening today. So they knew back then, so they put this in place for people to start saving for themselves. Now, the benefits of doing that were that you could save a percentage of your income for retirement, which was great. It was pre-tax savings. So the taxes are deferred for the future, which again seemed to be great. And the potential was there for companies to match a percent of your contributions, which is great. So if you put in 5 and they matched half, you got an additional 2.5%, guaranteed savings, guaranteed return because of their match, and things look great. But there were some side effects. There's a cap on the amount that you could save every year. Regardless of how much you earned, you could only save so much. When you started to take out the money down the road, there's an unknown tax rate that you could potentially be paying. And if you took the money early, there's a penalty and an ordinary tax if you took that money before 59 and a half. But many people did it anyway, and that's great. And everybody did. So let's divide the screen into two sides. The left side is 95% of the population. They have 401ks, 457s, 403bs, IRAs, and the alphabet soup continues. And that's great. But there's another 5% of the people, and those are the people earning more than $250,000, and many of those have an LIRP, which I will explain to you later on in the presentation. So let's dive in a little bit and let's take a look at the left side. People who had a 401k have to abide by the 59 and a half rule, which means when you get to 59 and a half, you need to start withdrawing some of that money towards your retirement. If you take it earlier than that, there's a 10% penalty and an average of a 30% tax rate on that. And okay, so fine, I'm saving, I'll pay some tax, not the greatest thing in the world. And despite the penalty and taxes, 86% of people take that money too early. So not only are you paying that you shouldn't be paying, but now you're also impacting your retirement down the road. Right. But again, 86% do it anyway. So the other side to that is, if you don't start taking at 59 and a half, you have to start taking at age 73, which is the required minimum distribution. If you decide to say to the government, you know what, I'm going to leave it there and let it grow, then start taking it out, they will also hit you with a 50% penalty on your own money. Now, the last time I checked, this was your money, so why are you giving any extra to the government? My slanted view, but reality says it's your money. Now, what we also have is, on the right-hand side, for those people that have the LIRP, there is no 59 and a half age rule. There is no RMD 73 age rule. So you can take the money before 59 and a half, or not take it by the time you're 73, and there is no penalty at all. That's something that should be done. So the question now here is, what do those people know that we don't, so they don't have to abide by those rules? And that's what we're going to get into. So again, left-hand side, most people have their money in the market. And that's great, because that's what most people are told that they should be doing. Now, the potential is there for big gains in the market. There's no question. We've seen the 90s were great. The 2010s were great. People were making huge amounts of money. But people tend to forget that while there's the potential for big gains, there's also the potential for big losses. So depending on where you are, what your risk tolerance is, your timelines and other things, you have to decide for yourself where you go. Now, you have money in the market and things are great, but what happens when 2002 comes along or 2008 comes along and the market takes a huge loss right before you're ready to retire? What does that mean for your retirement? So either you're going to have less money in retirement or you're going to have to work longer. Neither one, to me, is a great option. But again, everybody does what they need to do for their risk tolerance, which is giving you some options. On the right-hand side, has everybody heard of Warren Buffett? I hope you have.
Yeah.
Warren had two investment rules. The first one said, never lose money. Does anybody know what the second rule is?
Have an LIRP?
Close. The second rule was, see rule one, never lose money. And most people who are in that upper income tax bracket understand rule two, that they never lose money. And they have all these fancy accountants and lawyers and things that help them. But you don't need that fancy lawyers and accountants. We're giving you the information right here. How do they do this? They invest in vehicles that have what's called a floor. The floor means that if you invest money and that money grows, then the market takes a downturn. The money you have, the investment and its earnings, are frozen. You never lose money. The opposite of that, in most cases, there's a cap. So the cap says when the market grows, you will grow so much with it and then stop. But you're trading off losing money for some of the potential gain. Most people, again, on that right-hand side, understand this and go with it because that's how they grow. That's how their money grows. So if we go to the left side, let's do a typical example of a person who saves $500 a month or $6,000 a year. Because taxes are deferred, they're going to defer approximately, based on current rates, 30% a year or $1,800. So far, so good. Now, after 30 years, they would have saved $180,000, which is 6,000 times 30 years. Their money will grow to approximately $1 million, and they would have deferred $54,000 in taxes along the way. I want you to remember that $54,000 because it comes in shortly. So you're deferring for later. Now, at retirement, again, we said you're going to have about $1 million. And in year one, you say, I'm going to take $100,000. And that's great. So you take out the $100,000, and guess what happens? You're going to pay $30,000 in taxes based on the tax rate. Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think that the tax rate down the road will be the same, less, or higher than it is today?
Probably higher.
Most people would agree, myself included, that the tax rate will be higher down the road. But we're giving you a very conservative example of a 30%. So you put in the money at a deferred rate of 30%, which was the $1,800. Now you're paying $30,000. In year two, again, you take out the $100,000 to live on, and you're paying $30,000. if you see a pattern here, you're correct. The pattern says in 2 years, you have now paid the government $60,000 of income taxes, but you've only deferred $54,000 over 30 years. That's a problem, because
Right.
if you project out that entire 10 years of $1 million, at that same 30% rate, you would have paid the government $300,000 in taxes. You've only deferred 54. You think that may put a little bit of a crimp on your retirement lifestyle? The answer is probably yes. And why is this all happening? Because the government wants their taxes. See, when you defer, and the government knew this back then, they knew that if they gave you a small tax break on a small income and got it back later, even with the same tax rate at a larger percentage that you're taking out, they're going to get more taxes. And that's what's happening today. That's why this is such a problem, the 401k, from a tax perspective. Now, on the right-hand side, that same $1 million savings, but here's the difference. They're going to pay 0 taxes. Yes, they would have deferred 0, but they're also paying 0. Big change in what the wealthy do and what the average person does not know. Again, the reason for this presentation. How do they do that? The LIRP stands for a life insurance retirement plan. If it is set up correctly by a licensed professional, you will pay no taxes. You will defer no taxes from now until later. And this is how the wealthy get wealthy. They know the rules that we can show you how to do that. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, do you want a 401k or do you want a life insurance retirement plan? And the reason I ask people to put in to the chat box, if you have an old 401k that you left with a prior employer, let's chat. My info's in the chat box. Maybe we can move that money over for you so that you can start to earn more money and potentially pay less taxes later and have it grow for you. Because if you leave money in a former employer's 401k, they're no longer managing it for you. So it may not be meeting your current objectives, and the fees to maintain that account are much higher. So it's really a lose-lose situation. This is what we can do for you. Again, understand the 401k. I'm not saying it's a bad investment vehicle, but from a tax perspective, it's going to hurt you in the long term. So if you have any questions, let me stop this. It was a short, stop the share. Okay, there we go. It is a short presentation, but the point was, keep an eye on the taxes. There are different vehicles available for you that can help you grow your money potentially faster with less risk and greater gains.